Okay, as we get closer to the release of Volume 2 of Stranger Things 5, obviously speculation is rife about how the series is going to end, and people are arguing about, their theories and predictions and all of that. And I'm not here to argue, but I have some thoughts. And I have made notes this time to try to keep me on track because last time I tried to do this, it ended up being an hour long. And I know that a lot of my opinions are, they're not like hot takes, but I know that a lot of people think that they are absurd. And I think that's kind of not the point, but it's important. Stranger Things is a story about being different. It has had queerness and personal and gender identity as a central theme since season 1. It's also a story about the collective shadow. It's a story about shame, about the parts of ourselves we're told we should hide, and about being seen and loved for who we really are. So, in what universe does it make sense to have the main characters, specifically, all of the characters, but the main sort of kid characters, Elle, Will, and Mike, are who I'm thinking about kind of most here. In what universe does it make sense for them to get their happy endings by settling into the scripted futures that dominant society, represented by the rest of Hawkins, wants and sees for them? It does not make any sense to the story to have these characters end up in very specific situations. So let's get into it, right? It doesn't make sense for them to play out the same tired character arcs, and those character arcs are a big hot topic in the way that we talk about shows in terms of relationships and lack of relationships, and who characters will end up with, and romance specifically. Romance is I'm so tired of this being like the main theme, but I'm also tired of the subjectivity and when people say it can be a main theme and when it can't. So, as it concerns Elle, Will, and Mike, the happily ever afters for like young characters in any kind of show are always tied to romantic relationships. And I think that does specifically Elle a huge disservice. Something Stranger Things has consistently done well is subvert our expectations, build characters that feel real, and then give their stories endings that feel true and meaningful and inevitable, but also feel empowering, specifically ones that feel empowering for the freaks, right? Freaks is the term they use. So that's the term. I'm also a big fan of reclaiming language, so I'm going to use freak and queer. So when I say that Elle, as one of the main freaks in this show, deserves a story that doesn't end with her happily ever after being a hollow, unsatisfying, deeply problematic hetero romantic relationship, it's not because I hate her. It's because I think she deserves more than that. And it is our tendency as, a society, a culture, whatever, to value romantic love and romantic relationships above all else, specifically for women and female characters, that is driving us to claim that she should get the happily ever after with the boy who they've been building her up to be with since season 1. I'm sorry, but that's ridiculous. Elle's arc since season 1 has specifically and explicitly been about getting away from controlling structures, patriarchs, and patriarchal institutions that have tried to control her, limit her, and take away her identity. Her entire arc is about finding her identity as an individual, as a person, as a human with like a name, and as a woman. And to have that tied to who she is dating is absurd. Elle deserves so much more than to be living in Hopper's cabin, letting him decide what she can and can't do, and dating Mike. That is not her arc. And I think it's so discouraging that we all seem to think that that would, not all, but that so many people seem to think that that would be the happy ending for Elle. It's not, and they've been telling us that it's not since season 1. For 5 seasons, she has been fighting for autonomy, fighting for independence, fighting to get away from men in her life, whether that is controlling patriarchs or controlling boyfriends. And she hasn't managed it yet. She's made strides, she's come into a lot of her own power, but she still has yet to actually gain that freedom for various reasons. And her story is so layered and complex, and there are so many elements to it, and all of the trauma that she has suffered at the hands of these institutions and these father figures. Like, there is so much there, and she has worked so hard, and she deserves to have freedom. She deserves to be her own character in the end. She deserves that independence. This story, like the story of ending up back with Mike, that might make sense for, say, Nancy to end up back with Steve or to end up with Jonathan, because Nancy's arc is all about playing out the story of her parents before her. But for us to give Elle that story when Elle is on a completely different journey, Elle is trying to find out who she is as an individual, it just doesn't make any sense. It doesn't. And it's not because I hate Elle or because I want a gay kiss scene, which I don't think we're necessarily gonna get. Like, I do think that, and that's a whole other thing, I think Mike and Will's stories are, again, explicitly stories of the other. They are queer stories. But that's not a good ending for Elle. So I'm gonna leave that there for now, because there's Elle's storyline. Clearly we haven't been paying enough attention as an audience to realize what Elle deserves at the end of this and what her arc is, even though they've been telling us so plainly for 5 seasons at this point. I'll summarize what I have to say about Elle by saying she has been treated as a commodity, as an object, as a thing or a pet or some vulnerable thing, like vulnerable child or woman that needs protecting that needs protecting or that needs to be controlled and contained by everyone in her life except Max and Joyce, maybe Will. But her arc is to break free of that. And the fact that we keep saying that the ultimate happy ending for her is a relationship is honestly a disgrace to her, to the portrayal of female characters and female protagonists, and to every young girl watching this, and not so young girl now, I guess it's been a decade, but to every woman watching this, that would just be reinforcing that we can never break out of these cycles, that we may as well just repeat the patterns we've seen played out for us, even though we see them making everyone around us unhappy. And that, yeah, actually, the best thing a woman can hope for is a relationship with a man. And that's just not the story that they're telling. That's never been the story that they've been telling. So, then we come to Will's character arc. Will's story, again, I think we also have to consider that this is a story about the collective shadow. It is a story about shame and about the parts of us we feel aren't good enough to love, the parts of ourselves we feel are mistakes, the parts that people say make us freaks, and learning to love and accept and embrace those, and allowing other people to see them, right? Visibility is such a huge theme in this show, and for us to ignore that element is just foolish. It doesn't make sense. Will's arc is all about the shame that he feels for his queerness. Again, it has been so central to Will's storyline since season 1 that he is queer and he is targeted for it. We see him in season 5 coming to terms with that, loving his difference, his otherness, right? Everybody has something that makes them other. For Will, it is being queer. For Elle, it's being a woman. Like, there is some otherness about pretty much every character. And the characters who don't initially have this otherness, like Steve, come into it and learn to, like, we see them coming into that more. We see them embracing their nerdiness, their freak side, whatever. We see them embracing those aspects. But Will has been plagued by this shame about his sexuality since season 1, and is repeatedly affirmed to the characters, to the audience, that he will never be loved, that he doesn't deserve to be loved, that he won't be loved. And it doesn't make sense for his story to end with him not being loved. It doesn't make sense for his story to end with him either sacrificing himself or just being happy, being single, and like loving himself. We've had enough stories like that. We've had enough of those. He's already coming to love himself. Like, that was part of his story, absolutely. We saw that in the speech with Robin. It was about accepting himself, loving all the parts of himself, loving who he was, including his sexuality, and embracing that and letting that be his power, letting his otherness be his, or fuel his power. And it doesn't make sense to have that be disregarded. It doesn't make sense for his storyline to be, congratulations, you've accepted yourself, but you know what? You were right. You never will find love. You're going to be alone forever, because that's just what happens when you're queer. That doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense as a storyline. It's not empowering. It's not uplifting. It's just not, it's not a good ending. We've seen that trope over and over and over again. And I think they've done a really good job of subverting it with Robin's whole, like, you have to love yourself first thing, which is true. Like, seeking external validation and seeking other people to love you, saying, gotta let me know, should I stay or should I go? That isn't healthy. And Will is overcoming that. Will is finding it in himself to love himself, to accept himself, to be proud of himself. And then he can make connections with other people. Because when he loves himself, he stops being ashamed. And his whole storyline is about hiding, literally, from season 1. He's great at hiding. He's good at hiding. Where's Will? He's hiding. It is all about hiding and being invisible. He's finally embracing visibility. And that is what is so important for him, because you cannot let people love you if they cannot see you. And we see this coming up constantly with Max when she's pulling away and Luke is talking about, I can see you now. I wasn't looking hard enough, but I see you. That is what saves people from Vecna, is being seen for who they are, for exactly who they are, including the parts they're ashamed of, and being loved by the people around them. That is like just one of the key themes of the show. So it makes sense that Will has to let himself be seen in order to have that connection. That's just also how life works. Like, you can't connect with people if you're not being honest with them. And the whole show is about being honest with the people around you, being honest with the people who love you. Friends don't lie. Like, it's so intrinsic to the show. So I don't think it makes sense that Will is going to finally accept himself and not allow himself to be seen, not allow himself to connect with other people, not explore what is like available to him, and just believe that, oh yeah, I'm queer and I love myself, but I can't ever let anyone else see that. I can't be honest about how I feel. Like, lying to Mike about his feelings is one of the biggest instances of hiding. He's literally hiding behind Will, or behind Elle. And it doesn't, to have that be his ending, again, does not make sense. Now we get to the most contentious part, maybe, which is Mike. Preface to this, I'm not going to label Mike's sexuality because I don't think it's necessary. I think the whole story is kind of against labels. I will use the term queer, just like I use the term other or the term freak, to denote something that is not what is prescribed by limiting dominant society. Again, Hawkins represents the constrictive, restrictive, oppressive morality and like social rules, the social cage of kind of society in many ways, specifically America, small town America in the 80s, but like today as well. It is all of the limitations that we impose on people, including the labels. The idea of being typical or being normal, as we've seen throughout the whole thing, is really just forced conformity, right? That's what's killing the kids. It's hiding and burying and ignoring parts of ourselves to try to fit some mold that doesn't really exist and to try to be normal. And that's such a prevalent theme. And Mike is trying to be normal the whole time. So I'm not going to say that Mike is gay or bi. I'm going to say Mike is queer because I think that's a big part of his storyline. But I think Mike is queer in the way that I think a lot of people are queer and don't necessarily acknowledge it. And maybe that's, a crazy thing to say, and maybe that's going to cause a lot of disagreement, but whatever, that's my take. Many societies have not felt the need to label sexuality. The idea of heterosexuality is a fairly recent construction. In the ancient world, it was pretty accepted that people, obviously I can't just say the ancient world, various societies. And again, I'm not a historian. I'm mostly just going off of what I know and what I have read and researched and learned over years of various whatever. I'm not here to prove my credentials. In the natural world and in previous human societies, queerness has been accepted for what it is, which is natural. It's not weird, it's not different, it's not other. We call it queerness because we're saying it's other, but the idea of having an other comes from having a norm that we're all meant to stick to, a mold, and that completely ignores the expansiveness and individuality of human existence. None of us is doing human the same way. And so I think we can say that Mike is exploring queerness in the way that many people could and should be able to. And a lot of young people now are embracing this kind of idea a lot more, where you don't have to say that you're one thing or another. You can just let yourself develop feelings for people who you develop feelings for. And that's how it works. That's what's normal. Not normal, because normal, but that's not abnormal, I guess. That's not unnatural. That's not strange. So Mike's arc, I think, is specifically about escaping the repression of American conformity. It's about escaping what he should be, right? You can call it compulsive heterosexuality, you can call it internalized homophobia and repression, but it's the desire to be normal out of fear and guilt and all of these various emotions, largely tied to shame. Mike's arc is the rejection of shame around being different. And I think that's Mike's arc because he is raised in a way that he could pretend to be normal if he wanted to, right? We see that through Nancy. Nancy and Jonathan are both kind of mirrors of their younger siblings, and Nancy is a perfect mirror to Mike in terms of knowing that what is expected of her is what her parents have, and wanting to escape that. Mike wants to escape it too. There's a reason why he is a fantasy writer. Like, the idea of, and also again, D&D is inherently in a lot of ways queer. It is a place where you can explore different identities, different genders, different sexualities. You can flirt with the cute agender goblin. You can do whatever the fuck you want. And fantasy is the perfect tool for that. And it just, again, it is seen as something that is wrong and different. And it was like allowed until it starts being not allowed. But Mike's family is exactly what Mike doesn't want. His family, we see, is repressive and is emotionally distant. His father is not really there. He, like, his mother tries to be there for him. His mother is slightly more connected, but it doesn't make sense for Mike's happy ending to be becoming his father, becoming the patriarch, becoming the leader, and getting the girl and settling down. That's not what he wants. But his whole upbringing is like the picture of normalcy. Normality. I always say normality, but I don't know. It's the picture of what you should do. And he has the option to do that. But I think that's why it's so important. And I can't even say this is a prediction anymore because the Volume 2 trailer just confirmed it. But I've been waiting for Mike to go to the Upside Down and confront his shadow. Right? Mike's shadow is this fear of being different, it's a lot to do with guilt and shame and the fear, and I've rambled about this too, but the fear of what is below the surface. And we see what's below the surface in his family, right? His parents are fighting, his mom is dealing with I don't know what the correct way to say that is. His mom is using alcohol as a coping mechanism, to numb out the pain of a loveless marriage, of the facade that she is putting up. And Mike is aware of this, and Mike doesn't want this. So Mike's whole arc is about rejecting what is easy and normal in favor of what is true and real and honest, right? He is the one who is most likely to be honest about his feelings, but also the one who's most likely to repress his feelings. We see the depth of emotion that he has in him. And again, that's something that's considered not normal or acceptable, especially once he reaches a certain age. But we see this in him, and we see that he has the chance to break free from that. He has the chance to actually look at who he is and find the courage to embody that. Because it does take courage to show up as yourself when you know that that self is not what people want you to be, and when you know that you could just keep playing the role. It's easier to play the role, right? It's easier for Ted and Karen to just pretend that they're happy and keep going about their life than it is for them to get a divorce and start new lives. Like, following the script will always be easier, but there is a reason that Mike is a writer, right? Mike is not meant to follow the script. Mike is meant to write his own story. And the audience saying, and that can't involve him having feelings for Will, is frankly ridiculous, because when did we decide that that was not normal? When did we decide that wasn't okay? When did we decide that made it like a gay love story? Oh no. Like, it just doesn't make sense. It's not, that's not based in anything. That is all of this invented bullshit that the whole series has been showing us isn't what really matters. What really matters is what's actually true. What really matters is everything lurking in all the spaces that we don't address, everything that exists that we ignore, the entire Upside Down. Like, the whole story is a story about the worlds, the feelings, the phenomena, the existence of magic and possibilities and truths that most people are refusing to see, or most people refuse to see. And I think it's a great indication that in season 5 volume 1, episode 1 maybe, Mike gives us the line about usually they can't go back to their local village because they've seen too much. Mike has seen too much. He cannot be happy in the life that his parents want for him. So whether he ends up with someone at all at the end of season 5, I don't think is relevant. Well, okay, I do think it's relevant in that I think he should not end up happily in a relationship with Elle, because that sets us off on the happily ever after, right? That this is the pairing that's perfect together, and they were meant for each other, and they're going to get married and have kids and grow old together. That's not what either of them wants or needs. That wouldn't be growth for their characters. It wouldn't be breaking out of any kind of cage. It wouldn't be any kind of freedom. It would be returning to the local village despite everything they've seen. And that isn't what the story is about. The story is about going after what you know to be true, even when people call you crazy for it. So I think the idea that we're all wanting like a sweet, happy ending for these characters that is predictable and is just exactly what we've seen in so many other stories previously kind of shows how limited our imaginations are here, and shows how strongly this script has been nailed into us, that all of us are going, yeah, that's what would make them happy. A perfect, loving, hetero relationship that they'll stay in for the rest of their lives. They're 17. Like, they need to go somewhere else. They need to explore. They need to become people outside of all of the trauma and shit that's happened to them. They don't need to be locked into a relationship for the rest of their lives because people think that that's the ultimate happy ending and that's the goal and that's the prize at the end of the mission. It's not. And it pales in comparison to like self-discovery and growth and building a life that you actually love, writing a new story for yourself. So I'm sorry, got very passionate here, but I think the focus on the romantic relationship aspect of this is misguided. Like, it doesn't make sense because the ideal outcome for teenagers, and they are teenagers in the story, they are kids, the ideal outcome is not a relationship that you're stuck in for the rest of your life. The ideal outcome is finding yourself as a person and growing and learning to be brave and stand up for what you want, even if it's not what people expect from you. Like, I think we're really just limiting everyone's possibilities here and trying to push them into a script that we've been told from the beginning. The point of the story is to get away from that script. The point of this story is the difficulty of breaking out of the life that people see for you, the expectations people have for you. It's going for something that people think is crazy and being right because it's what you felt and what you wanted. Like, that's the story. And I think, yeah, despite the mainstream success, or because of the mainstream success, we forget that Stranger Things isn't a mainstream story. It's not a romance, it's not a thriller. It's a story about identity and the things that we can't see and all of the things we don't understand that we prevent ourselves from looking at and exploring because we prefer the safety of our cages and our hometowns and our labs and all of this, our suburban two-story, what am I saying, like single family homes. And that's not this story. This is a story of the freaks, the societal others, the outcasts, and the people who are different. But because it's gotten so popular, we try to force it into a box of tropes and like perfect happy ending kisses. And that's just not what it is. And that's not what it should be. The whole point of art and creativity and writing is that we can write new stories, we can make new stories, we can tell stories that reflect what we actually want in the world. I think the last thing that we need as a society is more like, oh yeah, this is what's perfect, more picture perfect kind of performative reality. Nobody needs that. We don't need more performative existence. We need more honesty, more authenticity, less lying, more seeing and being seen for who we are. And I have high hopes, honestly, that that's the ending that our characters are going to get. But I guess I'm baffled at some of the commentary on the season and how people think it's going to end and what people are hoping for, because while there are things that I absolutely hope for, I hope that when Mike goes to the Upside Down, he does confront his shadow, and I hope that Elle does find independence and breaks away from Hopper in some way. I'm also just excited to see. I don't want to be able to predict it all. No, I don't want it to be I don't want it to be reduced to a story that we've all read and seen before. I want it to be more real. And I think it has been over the last 5 seasons. So I have high hopes, but yeah, I just had a lot of thoughts and needed to get them out. So um, thanks for listening. Yeah, I guess I'd love to know if anyone else thinks this as well, or if I'm kind of on my own here. Yeah.